And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Excellent Decisions podcast. This is Robert MacPhee, your host, and we are here to help you learn the value and importance of making excellent decisions, decisions that are driven by your vision and your values rather than external stress and pressure. And our intention is also to help you thrive, to achieve at a really high level, which is fabulous, but also to be truly happy. And in our world, we use the ancient Greek definition of happiness, which is the experience of joy while in pursuit of your potential. It's what I want for myself, it's what I want for my family, and it's what I want for you. And the guests that we have joining us are intended to help us dive deep into that conversation about making excellent decisions and thriving and being truly happy. And today, if that is the case, I have the perfect guest. So I'm going to give you a little bit of her bio and then tell you a little bit of my experience of her, and then we'll hear from Kim. So Kim Serafini started her career in international corporate management consulting in the field of leadership, culture, and change. She is currently a CEO, an executive coach, and a business advisor. She's the inventor of lithos therapy, which she'll probably tell you a little bit more about. She's a best-selling author, a world-class keynote speaker, and most importantly these days, she's the creator of Positive Prime, which we'll definitely spend some more time talking about. She's the owner of Serafini Mind Spa, which is an exclusive retreat on Australia's Sunshine Coast in the state of Queensland. She is devoted to helping others make significant, long-lasting, rapid, and successful changes. Sounds like me. She is committed to continuing innovating and leading with advanced technologies. She's lived and worked in over 5 regions of the world, including the UK, Europe, the United States, Australia, and Asia. And she has enthusiastically visited 22 countries, maybe even more since this was written, and many states in the US. She loves to travel, explore new cultures and ideas while affectionately sharing her philosophy of positivity, living up to her title as the Queen of Gratitude. And just on a personal level, I've known Kim for several years now, and it's been a pleasure. And she is truly one of the most loving and caring and generous people I have ever met. She is just giving and giving and giving. She definitely does her homework. One of the things I admire most about Kim is that the work she does is all really well researched. She goes into depth and makes sure that she's right on the button that way. And she is also super fun. So if it's okay with you guys, we'll have a little fun and laugh a little bit today, probably as well. So Kim, thank you so much for joining me today, being part of the Excellent Decisions podcast. How are you today?
Robert MacPhee, what an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure. Gosh, I enjoy our conversations. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting me.
So I said in your introduction, and I do always like to throw something a little personal in there in addition to kind of the off the bio kind of introduction, but you have a really long and strong background in the area of management consulting and that type of thing, but also transitioned into the area of health and wellness. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened?
Absolutely. So leading an incredibly busy international life in the corporate world actually left me constantly exhausted, mentally, emotionally, physically, and at the time I didn't know it, but also spiritually. I would save myself at each destination with the massage, but I'd be lying there thinking, why is this particular therapist really effective at what they do? What is it about their technique? And because I suppose of my business school background, I'd lie there thinking, I wonder where the margins are. I was fascinated with exactly how the industry worked. And I went and took a sabbatical from the firm that I had been employed with. And I think everybody thought that I would go and do my master's in something that was business or finance related. But in fact, I went back to study and qualified as a sports therapist. And I specialized in the rehabilitation of injuries. Now, I'm going to really compress about 10 years worth of work. I trained over 5,000 therapists in something that is now very famously known as hot stone massage. But our brand, when we first launched it, was the only one in the world for the spa and beauty industries, and it used handcrafted black and white marble tools that you heated and chilled. And in a therapeutic sense, it actually delivered a superior massage therapy. What I found, Robert, was that in treating like clients of my own, but also in having they were licensees, like 500 spas and salons in Australia alone actually introduced the treatment as part of their menu of services and offerings, etc. What happened was I noticed that most people who really needed the outcomes of a massage were actually dealing with something that was mental or emotional. And I started to go down a rabbit hole that I still haven't come out of, which is how do our emotions actually impact our physical body? And in particular, how does, from a neuroscience perspective these days, our brain work so that it's healthy and vibrant? And what does that have to do with the outcomes in our lives and the way that we change? So the truth is, I would never have come to the insights that I did or created what is now well known as our proprietary formula in our special technology if I hadn't have been a sports therapist and didn't understand that you build a muscle by repetition. And repetition, of course, is extremely important to the way that the brain learns. And the way that the brain learns is actually extremely important if you want to change something. So we can talk about all of this, but I am even more passionate than I've ever been in my entire life. And people actually do think I'm relatively intense just at a baseline.
No, I think it's perfect. And what it does is it sets the stage for kind of how you and I really connected. We were both kind of in that health and wellness space previously, but we connected more in terms of the work that you're doing now. But I think it's something really relatable that you were in that kind of fast-paced, high stress corporate consulting kind of environment and needed some healing of your own. And because you have that problem solving mind, you got into, whether it was getting a massage or getting therapy or being in a spa, whatever it was, you got into that environment and created invented a better mousetrap, if you will. And I always think of you, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I always think of you when, we're looking at hotels or spas or whatever to go. And they always have these pictures of the spa and there's some beautiful woman lying on her belly with these rocks on her back. And I always go, I know the woman who created that. She should be getting $1 every time this photograph is brought up online. But, so that's amazing. And it's also, it makes so much sense that in looking at the physical side of wellness with massage and therapy and that type of thing, that it would lead you into more of the mental and emotional side of wellness and self-care and growth, and just living our lives the way we really want to live it, to get into that side of it, which obviously I know, but I want you to tell our audience more about what you're doing specifically in that area, because you have created a resource that is mind-boggling. Like I will never forget when I first heard about it and first experienced it. It was like, and I've been around a lot of kind of stuff like this, if you will, but I've never seen anything like what you've created. So tell us a little bit about Positive Prime and maybe a little bit of the story behind that and what's going on now with Positive Prime.
Whew. Okay, so in short, I was alarmed the first time I read that about 1.3 billion people on our beautiful planet will go through a period of depression. That's 15% of the world's population at some stage in their lives. And in fact, anxiety actually impacts around about 50% of those people from what we understand about the general statistics in this area. And what's fascinating to me is why people actually, or how people get into that state. And the truth is, there is an enormous amount of disease and destruction and violence and divorce and financially crippling situations, and the list goes on and on and on. But there's also just everyday stress, just really feeling some worry and some fear about what it is that we want to achieve and who it is that we are being, and concern over our family and friends. And what has generally captured my attention is research that has been done, and there is mountains of wonderful scientific evidence now that says that when you're feeling fantastic, absolutely brilliant and amazing, you do better. You're more productive, you're more creative, you're more resilient, you actually make more accurate decisions faster, you actually do have a peripheral vision change, you see more opportunities and solutions. And interestingly, if you're experiencing gratitude, you actually increase oxygen absorption from your blood system. You make all of your elastic fibers in your muscles much more pliable, and it goes on and on and on. And the interesting thing for me is, okay, so great. Now that I know there's this wonderful upside to feeling fantastic, how do you actually do that when you're an ordinary person living a normal life and you have a real amount that is piled on top of you, and you are in overwhelm, and you are in some cases, a situation where a relationship is actually feeling some strain. And so to go back a step, there are two aspects I think is really important for people to understand. First of all, our brains actually don't really like change. And here's the interesting thing.
Can I just mark that as the understatement of the day right there? Like,
okay, great. So
we may have all noticed that our brains do not like change. Yes.
No, they do not. And do you know what? Biologically, we're wired also for us to resist change. So I hear people who, you know, they might be experiencing liver damage from alcoholism, or they might be experiencing kidney issues from diabetes, or they might be experiencing, and I could go on and on and on. The point is that some of these people are absolutely beautiful in their hearts, and they actually have a motivation to change. They know they have to change. It's critical, but they can't, and they don't, and they won't. And it could be incredibly frustrating, except that someone like me just looks at these wonderful, gorgeous human beings and thinks, it's not your fault, all right? It's actually the way that your brain has set you up. So any change is actually in that uncertainty and ambiguity phase or state, right? And because we're not really sure of what's on the other side, our brain perceives it as a potential threat. It doesn't know whether the actual situation or circumstance or the environment is going to kill us. And so it will actually put us into flight or fight mode so that we can protect ourselves. And it means that we actually close down and we narrow our focus. And of course, all of the energy that our brain needs in order to function beautifully, it gets drained into our major muscles so that we can get ready to, you know, quite frankly, survive. So the point is that in order for you to change, your brain must be at its absolute optimal best. And in order for that to be the case, we now know, or we've ascertained, you must be positively primed purposefully. You must. Your brain must be in a state. And I'll give you an example. Dr. Barbara Fredrickson created something called the broaden and build theory. There are areas of your brain when you're feeling really positive, happy, satisfied, fulfilled, excited, enthusiastic, confident. There are parts of your brain that literally start to fire. You've got 86 billion neurons in your brain. And there's synaptic connections between those, like is infinite in terms of the numbers of different kinds of connections. But you won't have connections or activity. Let's call it, you won't have a theatrical thunderstorm, tropical storm in the area of your brain that is responsible for really enlightened problem solving unless you're in a positively primed state. And so someone like me then goes and devotes the rest of their lives to figuring out how can you very elegantly and gracefully and rapidly put someone in a positively primed state, right? So I know that that's a long-winded explanation to say, and the way that you do that, am I allowed to say the way you do that?
Absolutely. I think you've piqued our curiosity enough that if you didn't do that, that would be unfair.
So the way that you do that is you look at something that appears to be 1,000 flashcards flowing in front of your eyes as you're viewing it in an emotionally evocative, engaged state. And of those images, Robert MacPhee, you are going to forever be famous for saying, they're just not any words, they're just not any images or photos, and it's not just any music. And yes, there is this incredible formula, because out of 800 photographs that you will see flashing before you so that you're flooding your entire sensory awareness, they are carefully curated. There is a certain number of smiles, because we know that we want your mirror neurons to actually cause you to start smiling from within, and that's going to produce more serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin, and some other endorphins and neurotransmitters. That's going to give rise to the creation of a chemical cocktail that's going to actually allow your brain to be in an accelerated learning state. Your implicit and explicit memory is going to actually be impacted. When you're learning in this state, you will be able to learn more, recall it faster, remember it for longer. And that's actually just beautiful awareness that we have now, because we were very lucky to have some people do some research and write a wonderful efficacy statement to prove it works, right? So there's also a very particular way that you will see 200 frames that have certain types of words on them. They're self-fulfilling prophecies. They're part of the intelligence that we have now around appreciative inquiry and affirmations, and the way that the brain needs to receive instructions and suggestions and advice. And so what happens is that you put the brain in the state of being positively primed. Then you actually present the brain with new information that will help them to actually make the change. So, for example, it might be, you need somebody to start eating walnuts, because walnuts are actually fantastic from a nutritional perspective, but they actually hate walnuts. Well, if you put them into a positively primed state and you actually put photographs of walnuts, but either side you have a puppy dog or a pussycat and they love that, and a sailing boat, and an image of someone skiing down a slope, you will actually cause their brain to create and collapse a theme across 16 images. And it's almost like there's emotional contagion even over the content that you need them to actually absorb into their other than consciousness. And so it's miraculous in the way that it works. And it only takes 3 minutes a day. But it's a bit like brushing your teeth. You have to do it every day, because it actually only lasts for about 6 to 8 hours. So did I actually cover it all just then, Robert?
You did. So here's what I want to do. And I think people can tell by listening to you that there's a lot going on here. So I want to go back to something I said earlier and just really reiterate it, which is that you can tell listening to Kim that she's not just making this stuff up because she thinks it would be neato. She's done her homework. Like, there's a tremendous amount of research, and I've found it fascinating as I've been around you and your work, the quality and the caliber of the people that are drawn to the work that you're doing, and the opportunities that you have had to validate it from bona fide, legit, super serious sources. So that's one thing. The other thing is in the context, and I kind of interrupted you a little bit earlier when you were talking about, we resist change. And I think that's one of the points where you and I, and your work and my work, really come together in a very powerful way. Because I'm not a scientist. I don't have the kind of relationships with scientists. I'm like you, kind of I need to figure this out kind of a person. And I've taken more of an intellectual, kind of a mental approach to understanding why it is that people do have a hard time pursuing a goal, creating a change in their life, even when we would all agree, when there's no doubt that it's something that would be good for them. Being healthier, being in a better relationship, making more money, whatever it is, those no doubters, like, we know it would be good for you, and yet people still experience the resistance. And what I love about Positive Prime, and why I've created an Excellent Decisions Positive Prime session, is because I can explain to people, and I love to do it, give them an understanding of why they've struggled in the past, what I call it the dynamics of change, like what goes on, why resistance shows up, what it means to be stuck in your comfort zone. I can give them an intellectual understanding of that. And even with that, it's still difficult. And I feel like at that point is where you and I came together. And now by offering people the access to the Positive Prime session that has all of the imagery and the music and the aspects that you're talking about, and it's customized to the conversation they're already in with me, it creates an opportunity for them to continue to work with me, but they've cut the cord on this huge anchor called all that resistance that often shows up. At a minimum, they've got far less of it because they have the opportunity to tap into, and I know you cringe every time I say this, but in terms of putting it in a context that people can understand, it's kind of like having an online vision board on steroids. It's imagery. It's a, you know, we talk about excellent decisions based on your vision and your values. We're taking that vision component and doing something incredible with it. We're like accelerating it and again, just creating an opportunity to get out of our own way. So again, there's a lot more going on. And I always love to see your face when I call it an online vision board, because if we were in the same room, you'd be reaching out and strangling me because of all the work that's gone into creating something that's so much more than that. But again, to just put it in a context that people can understand.
And can I tell you, Robert, something, and tell all of you listening? Do you know, if you use it as a mood board, a vision board, or a gratitude journal, it's actually also going to work miraculously well. I'll give you an example from the science, right? If I ask you to think about a time when you were actually succeeding at something when you had achieved what you had set out to do, some moment where you'd been feeling proud, or you've looked back and you've thought, wow. If you actually have a photograph of yourself in that moment, and you, what we call it in our software, you upload it to personalize your session so that you're editing with your own private photographs and your own goal statements that you're inserting in there. What happens as you're in this positively primed state and you're watching, so for example, Robert's Excellent Decisions, when I watch Robert's Excellent Decisions 24/7 when it is appropriate for me, I actually feel like Robert is with me, his energy, his essence is with me. He is repeating the most important messages that he wants me to actually apply and to have live in my life. And so it's a great reminder tool for me as well. It also gets me to bond with Robert and what he's actually trying to help or cause or facilitate in me as a client, if I am indeed a client of Robert's. And so what's even more fantastic is I'm learning, because I'm actually absorbing the content, which is a summary of his content or his messages. But interestingly enough, every time I see a photograph of myself, say when I was graduating from college, I get a little dopamine hit. And actually that's really healthy for my brain. It also then impacts my hippocampus, which of course then ultimately will impact the way that my body moves from now and into the future. So interestingly enough, Robert, one of my great real intentions these days is to actually get people, it's very simple. You just upgrade your account once you're inside and you've created your own free account. And if they've used your referral code, Robert, as in the referral code that gifts them your Excellent Decisions session, which you can give to them later or, you know, write to them. The interesting thing is that they're actually going to make it a lot more powerful. It's more potent, the more private photographs that they actually upload. So it is, in fact, a very serious vision board that is much more likely to work, because it's actually being viewed when you're accessing your other than consciousness, which is the part of you that puts you on automatic pilot to create changes organically, naturally, automatically.
So I don't have the referral code right here in front of me, but what I'll do is I will put it in writing in the description of the podcast. And what people can do is they can go to, correct me if I'm wrong, but positiveprime.com, and they can use that referral code, which will get them access to this Excellent Decisions Positive Prime session that we're talking about. And in terms of
very generous of you.
What's that?
That's very generous of you as well.
Well, this is what we want, though. This is what both of us, I think we agree. We want people, first of all, to, you know, get past this resistance that shows up, get a chance to take a look at what you've created with this amazing resource. And at the same time, there is an opportunity to upgrade, and it segues perfectly into one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, because you talked briefly, I'm not sure if people really got the full scope of the fact that you said, well, if I see a picture of myself graduating, there's an opportunity with this technology to put our own individual pictures in there. So for instance, when I play my session or anyone else's session, I've put in pictures of myself and my children and my wife and beautiful places that I've been or want to go. And those photos get woven in to the sessions that I'm watching. But that's part of the upgrade. And at the risk of making this sound like, you know, that's how they get you, tell them how much it costs to upgrade, because it's ridiculously inexpensive.
It's $9.99 a month for your upgraded premium membership.
Yes. So if you just had access, honestly, I'm so proud of the session that we worked with Kim and her team to create. I can honestly tell you, if you had nothing other than the opportunity to continue to have access to the Excellent Decisions session that we created for $9.99 a month, it would be absolutely worth it. But what you're getting then with the upgrade is the opportunity to customize it. And also, it's going to accelerate your ability to get access to other sessions as well. And perfect segue again, the customization is part of what makes the technology totally unique. And I think I am the one who coined the phrase, yes, words, but not just any words, and yes, music, but not just any music, and yes, pictures, but not just any pictures. But there's some elements of the way that it's delivered that make it even more unique. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, great. So I was first enamored with neuroplasticity about 10 to 15 years ago. I saw Professor Richard Davidson speak at a conference, and it totally changed my life. Interestingly enough, at the same conference, I saw Professor Stephen G. Post present, and he is one of the most exquisite people on the planet. But that needs a whole nother hour. So the truth is, we knew that the actual formula had to be created in such a way that the software allows you to press play and watch a session all the way through, and you can speed it up. So I would recommend that everybody starts slowly. Speed 1 or speed 2, watch it all the way through, if you can, at least your first time. That would take around about an hour. But the same session, when you press play again tomorrow, will be reshuffled. It's like we reshuffled the deck. And the reason why we do that is because we want your brain to actually make new neural connections between different images and different words. It will actually spark creativity, is one of the outcomes. Interestingly enough, as you actually become very comfortable with the content, you can actually speed it up to speed 10. When you're at a higher speed, say speed 5 or 6, you will actually find that the content bypasses the conscious critical judgment factors of your prefrontal cortex. That is the bit that prevents new information coming in, because our brains actually assessed anything that was new and unknown as a threat. Like when we were out in the savannah in our caveman days, the reptilian part of our brain didn't know whether that thing approaching was either a saber-toothed tiger that was going to kill us or a friendly fellow tribesman. And so what we did was we actually just immediately categorized anything that was new and different as a threat. And that is actually the fascinating aspect of what we learn. So we need to actually make sure that we're in a positively primed state whenever it is that we're approaching anything that is new or different.
So you skimmed over, and I want to make sure people really get this, because again, you know, and most people know, I spent a lot of time working with Jack Canfield, and in the context of the time that I worked with Jack and everything he has going on in his orbit, I had the opportunity to see a lot of other resources that people might think are similar to this. But the two things, actually three things, we talked about the customization element, that we can actually put personal imagery in there, is one. Number two is that you can actually adjust the speed. So imagine you've got a slideshow of these images going in front of you, and it can be on your phone, it can be on your tablet, it can be on your computer. You can play it in any of those platforms. And these images are going by, and you can set the speed. You can actually adjust the speed. And again, Kim, I just really want to make sure this is really clear because it's so amazing. You can literally create an experience of the slides going by nice and slow, and you can almost imagine it being like a deep meditative process. And then I don't know about anybody else, but maybe you've had a day where you were kind of busy and didn't have time for a deep meditative process, and you can turn that dial and you can change the speed. So the same session, so how long does it take to play a full session at the slowest speed?
About an hour.
About an hour. So it could literally take an entire hour to play the complete session of the slides going by, click and click and click. Or you could turn the speed all the way up and it plays in how much time? At the highest,
3 minutes.
About 3 minutes. And at that point, they're just going by like click, 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 click. They're literally, and this is part of the most interesting part of the kind of the brain science to me. I know intuitively that my brain is able to absorb a lot more data. My mind, my brain, my nervous system is able to absorb a lot more data than my conscious mind can fully grasp. And to me, that's an amazing part of this technology, is that if I only have 3 minutes, I really can get the entire session. And if I had to pass a test on it, I would fail miserably, but it's going in. Like, I'm getting it, right? The research shows that I am getting it.
You wouldn't fail miserably. You will have comprehended it, and you would be astonished.
Even better. There you go.
You would have comprehended it. That's the crazy, wonderful, amazing aspect of it.
Yeah, and that must be one of the most fun parts for you of having been immersed in birthing this technology, if you will, is getting that awareness of what we really are capable of, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so Robert, here's something that really has inspired me. We have about 50,000 thoughts a day, more if you're a woman, less if you're a man. And about
hey.
We both know that I have a crazy number.
If that wasn't so true, I'd be offended.
Yeah. It's like the amount of words that women use compared to most men. Anyway, so some of that, by the way, is very scientifically researched. So we're not doing any gender bias stuff here, which I have to actually say there's two other aspects. I'm going to do it really fast. In our formula, we actually address biases, conscious biases. So you will see photographs of amazing women accomplishing amazing things that are really out of the box exposure for us. You will see an amazing array in terms of diversity around race and religion. You will actually, and I'm going to put this in perspective, let's just say you have a goal of making more than $1 million, but you've never made more than $1 million. Arguably, your brain actually doesn't really know how to get there, because if you knew how to do it, you would have already done it. And so you have to actually acknowledge that if you want to achieve something you've never achieved before, you actually need stimuli that's going to cause you to think like you've never thought before and feel like you've never thought before as well, because that'll, of course, drive new and great behaviors and habits and so forth. So one of the aspects of our formula is the types of photographs, the styles of photographs we actually do show that addresses all sorts of biases. Anyway, because about 50% of our thoughts in everyday, ordinary, wonderful people in our average lives are negative, 50% negative, it means an enormous number of thoughts, that inner voice that we have. I wonder if you've ever actually really tried to be silent enough to listen to your thoughts, observe them, notice how many of them are either positive or negative, and then figured out how that's actually making you feel about yourself and your future. But anyway, if you go through that process, the truth is that we understand what we must do is we must change the percentages if we actually want to be more resilient. And the fact is, life and artificial intelligence and robotics is going to change everything that we currently understand. So we need to be more resilient. We need to have very agile thinking. And in order for that to happen, you're going to need your brain in a positively primed state. That's just the truth, right? So I would never, ever, ever go to a meeting now without being positively primed. And if you're actually in my organization, if you haven't positively primed yourself before the meeting, we make you do it at the start of the meeting. That's how important it is to make sure your thinking is at its best, right? We have figures around increases in sales from organizations that actually train their people in terms of positive priming who are in the sales roles. We have amazing results actually that we're starting to see in manufacturing environments where people are less likely to be involved in accidents or incidences. That of course has impacts on insurance premiums in organizations that are, manufacturing centered. So the work that we're doing is really far reaching. The implications, the applications is just, quite frankly, way beyond my wildest imagination, and is such a joy, but it's also very challenging. We are in a very new space. And so the interesting thing that I am starting to do is working with like Dr. Selena Bartlett, who is actually a professor of neuroscience, because we want to understand if we can actually test in a clinical study how immune biomarkers are affected by watching positive prime. We can see that there is actually the potential to do some research and compare positive prime to like EMDR in a professional setting with therapy and PTSD. But the truth is we need to be really super successful. We need to be really very profitable, and we need the help and support and sponsorship of lots of great governments in order to do some of this research. But we're actually on the brink of something remarkable.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I think it's obvious to people that I'm a big fan. I do want to go back and close one little loop, because we were talking about, on the one hand, the customization of the program, and that's something that makes it very unique. The second thing that we talked about was the fact that you can adjust the speed, which is another thing that, again, makes it completely customizable and completely unique and different from anything out there that people might perceive to be similar to this. And the third thing that I always refer to that makes it really unique, that we talked about really quickly, but I want to make sure people understand how important it is that every time I sit down to watch the Excellent Decisions session, it is completely reshuffled. So however many hundreds of images we have in there, they're playing in a completely different order every time I watch it. And I know from being around this work for a very long time that you can do very powerful work with people, and you can create statements or affirmations or visualizations or whatever they might be. And over a period of time, if we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, at some point it stops having the same effect. So talk a little bit about why it's so important to have it reshuffle.
It's critical actually, because it actually causes the brain to stay engaged. And when you're actually engaged, you're also having an open eye meditative experience. It actually grounds you also in what, now is very popular in terms of a mindfulness experience. It helps to present you, and it actually trains you in terms of focus. So we have long-term users who've got great anecdotal stories about how they actually have the ability to focus and concentrate a whole heap better, because effectively they've been training their brains, right? And in order to create that novelty, and your brain loves novelty, you have to actually make it see different things in different ways from different perspectives. You have to shift it. And we can do that technologically in the formula because we've reshuffled the deck. See, the interesting thing also, Robert, is that I've actually got a client who, we'll call him Daniel because I actually just accidentally said it. And he suffers from PTSD, and he actually had a situation that did involve a sailing boat where somebody died. And the truth is that could be a trigger. But if we put that image, this viewing experience, and either side of it, they actually have a great memory of being in Paris, and there's a picture of the Eiffel Tower. And we have a statement that says, why am I grateful for the sunshine? Or who am I grateful for who has helped me to focus on my strengths? And there's lots of different ways that we actually craft these messages. But the very next time we actually show you the sailing boat, and you also love horses, and you see that that image or that trigger with a horse, your brain is creating new connections, and it's taking the essence or the feeling or the theme of Paris and horses, and it's actually applying the emotional weight to that photograph of the sailing boat. So what used to trigger you won't trigger you anymore. And in fact, they do this with return services people who, Prince Harry, I don't know if you understand this or knew this, he actually has something called the Invictus Games, which is like the Olympic Games or the Paralympic Games for people who have returned from service. They're in the Army or Navy, et cetera, and they've been in some way, shape or form injured mentally or emotionally or physically. And there's this huge games, and we're talking like tens of thousands of competitors from all around the world. Now, if you served in Afghanistan, but at the games you were actually competing against, or you had Afghanis in your team, you would have an emotional resonance there. There would be a cognitive dissonance that your brain would be dealing with. So prior to that, if you were, say, in the Australian Army, and this is a fact, you would have been shown flashcards of Afghanistan's environment, its people, and you will also have been shown it in relation to lots of other photos that you, quite frankly, are sensitive to in an entirely different way, like a kangaroo and a koala and an Australian beach and Vegemite. And so you create these newer associations. It's a very complex area. You just need to know that we've done it for you, and we do apply the very best evidence-based principles to the formula. And look, we have all sorts of stories from people who, you know, quite frankly, there was a woman who had not slept soundly since she was at Auschwitz, and we're talking decades. And she just trains herself every day for 100 days to watch 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. And quite frankly, she has absolutely peaceful, sound, healthy sleep all the way through the night for the very first time in decades. And it's because she got her brain to focus on something different. And you know this, whatever we focus on expands.
This is so awesome. So I'm really glad that one of the things I threw in at the beginning was about how you do your homework and the research behind what you do. And I think everything that you've shared with us today, and I am watching the clock and realizing that we should get into wind it down mode. And I knew this was going to be a conversation that we could go and go and go. But again, we try to honor the time. But clearly anyone who's listening to Kim can tell that I meant what I said, that she has really done her homework, and there's a tremendous amount of research behind this. Like you just said about the reshuffling, you don't need to know. You know, I'm thinking as I listen to you, you know, some people walk into a room and they turn on the light switch and they need to figure out why the lights came on, you know, and I'm sure if somebody really wants to know more, there's probably all sorts of ways they can find out all the science and everything behind it. And that's great. That's not me. I'm one of those people. I walk into the room, I hit the light switch and I go, wow, that's so cool. Look, the lights came on. I love that. And I think it's absolutely possible to have that same experience with Positive Prime, where when you try it, and that's where we'll leave people, is with the opportunity. While you were talking, I did click through and find the referral code. So, and we will put it in writing. If you're driving while you're listening to this, you don't need to swerve over to the side of the road or whatever. It will be in the description of the podcast, but you can go to positiveprime.com and you can use the referral code Robert-153. And if it is case sensitive, you would need to use a capital R. I don't know if it is case sensitive or not, but Robert-153. And that will get you access to the Excellent Decisions Positive Prime session. And you can try it for yourself. You can have that experience of walking into the room and turning the lights on and seeing the difference that it makes. And Kim, I'm just so grateful to you. This has been good for me to get re-anchored into this conversation. I'm thrilled that the Positive Prime session that we just updated with all the new branding that I have around Excellent Decisions is now a part of what I'm doing. If I'm working with a coaching client, if people are participating in my online course, if I'm doing consulting work, the Positive Prime session is one of my ways of helping people cut free of that anchor, accelerate the process, and be able to get the results they want and have the experiences they want much more quickly and easily. It really is an amazing resource to help people do that. So we're setting people up with the opportunity, now that you've heard about it and learned about it, to get in and try it for yourself. Is there anything else that you want to say as we wrap it up? Anything else that you want to add?
You know, I'd love to. In terms of Excellent Decisions, Excellent decisions that are actually guided by your visions and values is imperative. You need your brain to be in a positively primed state. That's just scientific fact. In order for you to be able to then leverage your vision and values to make an excellent decision. There is actually a case study. Kaiser Permanente had all of these doctors in life-threatening critical situations go through the process of actually reading essentially what was the case study. And if they had been positively primed, they came to more accurate diagnoses faster. And if they had been negatively primed, they actually did not. The implications have changed everything within that hospital system. And my good friend Sean Acor is absolutely involved in that whole program. And when his book is called The Happiness Advantage, and what we say is when people have the happiness advantage, what they are actually is positively primed. I'm telling you, if you want to make accurate decisions faster based upon your vision and values, excellent decisions that is, you really have to be positively primed. You really do.
You're my new agent. I'm on record as saying I didn't ask him to do that, but thank you so much. And it really is, you know, one of the things I love about connecting with you anytime we have the opportunity is there's so much synergy between what you're doing and what I'm doing. And, you know, it's just a perfect alliance. And I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to use the podcast as a way to help get the word out. And I'm thrilled again to have the opportunity to share the Positive Prime session with the people who are working with me on other levels, because I know it will accelerate their results. So if people do want to learn more about what you're doing, if they want to get in touch with you, any other suggestions other than to go to positiveprime.com, or is that the best way to learn more?
That's probably the best way, through our contact. You know what, I'm really approachable. I'm an Aussie, I'm very down to earth, and I'm very happy to explore anything that you want to explore in this realm.
Good, cool. I think this is our first international version of the podcast. I'll have to go through and review, but we didn't really say that. We talked about all the different places that Kim has lived, but you can tell by listening to her that she's not from around here, not from these parts. But you're fabulous. I just love the opportunity to connect with you. I love to support the work that you're doing in any way that I can. I so deeply appreciate your support for the work that I'm doing, and thrilled that we were able to have you as a guest on the Excellent Decisions podcast. For those of you who are listening, thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you join us again as we continue to bring in experts and guests and super interesting people like Kim, who are committed to making excellent decisions based on vision and values rather than external stress and pressure. And again, our intention is to help you thrive, achieve at a really high level, and be truly happy, which means experiencing joy while in pursuit of your potential. We'll see you next time on the Excellent Decisions podcast.